Please.
One of the most important things. Pause recording. All right. Hey, everybody. It is great to see you here. We are, I am Kurt Molly. This is Jeff Schechter, otherwise known as AKA Shecky. You look great, sir. It is great having you here. Ooh, by the way, I'm going to share this on Twitter. So, hey, if we say something that's really smart or that you like or that you're like, hey, someone should listen to these guys, besides just, of course, your amazing self, please give us one of the best compliments you can out here. Go ahead and tweet us out or put this on the Twitters, which is really quite interesting. And remember, if Shecky or I say anything smart as well, too, you can go ahead and give us this little high five like Pierre is just doing over here as well, too. And, hey, as we're talking about this entire thing, if at any time you would like to find out more about what the heck we are talking about, you can always click on this link right down over here for SMAG 2, or we're going to talk about social media ad genius, or you know what I should be able to do now, Shecky, which would be great. smag2.com/Webby is our breakout session for this Wednesday, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, a darn good one, I might add.
A darn good one. Well, I know you've been working on this one a lot because this is where really, let's be honest. This is where, let's see here if this works. Heads up drop-ins won't show in recordings or audio archives, but we're working on it. Okay. Drop-in, oh, hang on a second. That goes into a link here. Drop link anywhere. Very interesting. Oh, yeah, people can register for the breakout session in this one window right here. We are doing some interesting things here on the Blabs. Yeah. All right. So, shekels, really important.
Yes.
We had South by Southwest here in Austin this week, last 2 weeks. You would
Yes, I know.
In Austin, but the city is absolutely crazy. Now,
I know it's too much for me.
I loved it. I think, Shecky, next year, if you stay here, right, you can come over and stay at the Lair for a couple of days, watching the city without being in any traffic jams, listening to concerts from my porch. Couldn't imagine that I'd ever have the ability to do that. It is absolutely amazing. But I would say one of the I'm going to close out a window. I'm having a little technical issue here. I will say one of the most amazing things, Shecky, and one of the most blessed things we can do in Austin, we have people from all over the world who travel in here to talk about technology, music, movies, and just listening to international opinion and what people think of America or, why they came to Austin. We are very privileged to have such an amazing group of people come here. And we are absolutely stoked that you guys are all here listening to us as well. So I really appreciate that. So one of the things that we have been talking about since December is the social media ad genius profit factory. And basically what we say is, hey, look, if you have a product, service, or idea that you can monetize, you're in the right place at the right time. Hey, if you can identify your avatar, great. If you go through this 12-step process that Shecky and I have been teaching really for the last almost 3 months, and you can have access to all the recordings, it comes down to the fourth principle that will make you a ton of money as proof and being able to prove your entire funnel process. Well, we talked about everything from setting up the avatar to targeting and retargeting and landing page. And now how do we do the follow-up? And then after that is, okay, what's the weekly event that we're going to have? And then after that, it was, okay, we have this weekly event, right? We're building to something. Now here's the weekly call to action. This is one of the hands down most important trainings you're going to have on how to make money. Because what so many people get confused with is, Shecky, here's what I love. Here's the first one to kind of talk about a little bit too, right? Because we're talking about a call to action that should happen weekly. Now, just from a 10,000-foot view, every single week you should be emailing your list. You should have a different retargeting ad that's running to your list for at least content. Like, for example, every time we release a blog, we return the retargeting ad on, so people who have opted in or who have not opted in are seeing our blog content. Well, on our blog, we always have a call to action. And that call to action is, hey, join our Blab, or on the left-hand side, they can sign up. They can sign up for Social Media Ad Genius, or they can get in contact with us. They always have a call to action. There's always a reason. But Shecky, you and I have talked about this a lot of times. A lot of people don't like to sell. They don't like to close, and they feel that if they just send them free content over and over and over, they're going to build a rapport. When in fact, they are training the people to respond with free. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked a lot about that. So what do you see if someone does not have a call to action and they just send content emails, let's say for 30 days? Have you ever seen that be wildly profitable? No call to action for 30 days and just send them free stuff?
I've never seen it. I have seen some situations where there's people with, really big names with really large lists that'll spend a week or so just giving some really, really intense, amazing content. But it's always.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're just going to say it.
No, I'm saying it's always followed up with a call to action. In other words, maybe it's a launch, or during that first week it's kind of subtle, or there's a buildup or something like that. But there's still always a hinting, a foreshadowing of something to come.
Just to be clear, we want to train people to take action. So the call to action could be, for example, let's just talk about sending people to a landing page, right? So I want you to write this down. This is very important. Your call to action should always lead to the next step of your call to action. Your call to action should just really lead to the next step. That's it. So for example,
next logical step.
Thank you, Shecky. I appreciate that. That's exactly.
That's the word you're looking for.
No, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you. So what happens is, when someone sees your ad that you're targeting to the right avatar, why are they going to click? And when they click, what are they going to see on the other side? That's what they're going to want to see, not just, hey, click on this picture, right? So now they click on the ad. By the way, when you do ads for Facebook, small little tip, you don't have to say, click the link to find out more. Just add the link. Use a little button that says, find more. Don't say, like and share this. Facebook doesn't like you to alter the algorithm. Make it really logical that people will click on the image, and they know that they go over. Now, as soon as they click on the image, we talked about this on landing pages, right? Remember, Shecky, we were talking about with Nick, the 10-foot rule, right? On a landing page, he does. Do I know?
Yeah, way back there.
What I'm supposed to do, right? And if it's not clear,
it should be very, very obvious from that distance.
It should. Now that they've opted in, they're going to do something next. Did they get an ebook? Do they get an email where you say, click this link to make sure you join us on the webinar? Every call to action should lead to the next logical call to action. I want to be very clear when we're talking about call to actions this week. Call to action doesn't not necessarily mean a sale. A call to action is asking them to do one thing to move to the next. And once they go to the next spot, you're going to encourage them to go to the next. You're going to go to the next move. So, Shecky, let's talk about call to actions, since that's what we're going to talk about all week long, right?
Okay.
So, call to action. Let's just say starting out. How do we train people to do a call to action, even just on the Facebook fan page? Like, what are some suggestions that you would have for people to start training their people on their fan page just to click?
Well, I think you could always send things to another article. Like, for example, we talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago the content ascension model, and it's still just a progression of leading people to that next logical step. So it doesn't necessarily have to be to a buy, and I guess I want to be clear about that. That a CTA, a call to action, is exactly that. It's not necessarily a CTB, a call to buy. It's a call to action. So it's your decision as to whatever that next logical step is in your marketing sequence. It might be some ascension of different content. There might be 1 or 2 pieces that you want to lead them through, where that call to action takes them to the next piece of content that gives them a little bit more detail, or there's a little bit more convincing that goes on. Ultimately, call to actions could be anything. I mean, it could be registration to a webinar, if that's what you wanted to do. Obviously, if somebody came to your webinar, they would end up on your email list, and somewhere in that email list might be, well, there definitely should be another CTA in there where there's an opportunity to buy whatever you were selling on the webinar. So yes, buying and sending people to a shopping cart is definitely a call to action. But I want to be clear with people that they understand that what a CTA isn't necessarily a buy. It oftentimes is. But like you say, Kurt, this is the reason why I'm diving into this, is just so people understand that a marketing sequence doesn't necessarily mean that it's always buy all the way along. Sometimes people need to be led and given a little bit more information. And we talked about content and retargeting and things like that, where we're having that opportunity to warm up the audience and give them a chance to know us, like us, right? So any of those CTAs along the way. But it should be a very, very clear command as to what to do next. One of the biggest issues that we see is people being ambiguous about this, right? Like they just don't quite, well, you could do this, you could do that. No, you want to make it just like, look, go here, do this. This is the next logical step.
Yeah, always think And we talked about this a little bit the last time I was on the Blab, which I guess a couple of weeks ago already, just because of travels and stuff like that. Very interesting. Am I doing my client a service or a disservice by not taking the next step? So, for example, when you get somebody on your email list, you want them to train them to click on your links. But when they click on your links, you don't want to use clickbait. Oh my goodness, I got one of the greatest tips in Facebook, click here. And then it goes to an affiliate offer. They're like, I didn't want to see that stuff. And then they close out the page. What ends up happening is people are like, they're just always sending me to junk. Like, I'm not going to click on their links. I'll read their emails, kind of see what they're going on, but I'm not going to click on their links. Or what you do is make sure that your ads are like your emails, meaning that they're really relevant, which is like, for example, we email out our list and say, hey, this week we're talking about the science of the call to action. Shecky just wrote an amazing blog article that really breaks down what are some of the most important things that you're going to need to know for a call to action. Click here to find out more. Well, that clicks on the link that goes over to the blog. Now, the blog, the call to action is we always think through this on the left-hand side. What do we want people to see? Because that's where our ad is. Scroll on down. What's the next logical step? Very important. Now, when people are on the Blab, for example, like you right now, if you would like to join us for the breakout session, you can click on this little where you see it, although it says breakout session registration. Click the open link. Yeah, I don't know why there's not an image right there. If you click on that, right, you'll register for the webinar. That's just a call to action. Well, every single week when we're talking about the breakout sessions, every single week, we always have the link. There you go, Shecky, right there. Our call to action is go to the web. Now, what happens is people will go to our online breakout session, and our call to action on the online breakout session is, hey, if you're not a member of the Social Media Ad Genius family, join us. Get the recording for a week or get the recording forever if you're a part of the Social Media Ad Genius family. So every single week, we're moving people along. And the people who don't click on the links or the people who don't come to this webinar, maybe it wasn't for them. That's okay, because next week, we have additional relevant content coming out, but we're always getting people to take action. Shecky, one of the things when we're talking about, what we were talking about when we were planning for this meeting is we were talking about the color of buttons, right? And split testing. So those are calls to actions. Now, we just talked about training people to click on a link for a call to action, or training people like to come to your blog on a regular basis. But, you and I debated this a little bit. When is it really even necessary to worry about what color your button is versus testing out landing pages or copy hook?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's interesting. Look, the reality is there's definitely a science to all this stuff. If you read the blog post that I put up there, and especially if you come on Wednesday, we're going to do a very deep dive into the whole, the scientific aspect of this, right? Where we talk about, white space and button colors and command language and all that other kind of stuff. But what's interesting is that people will get very, very hung up on this. And that's why I'm glad for the way that you phrased the question, because this is already been proven by a lot of people ahead of you. So the information that we're giving you is tried and true, and it's proven, and it just flat out works. So from a standpoint of testing, whether you want to have, a Helvetica font versus an Arial font, or whether you want it to be 14 points versus 16, or you want it to be green versus orange, or have a circle around it, don't mess with that for right now. The more important part is just go look. If you take the general science and go, okay, let me just follow these 8 or 10 things that Shecky put into the blog, or a further detail of what I learned on the webby. Great, I've got a good page full of notes. I can build a good CTA from there. That's it. I would not spend any more time testing than that, because unless you're spending $10, $15, $20,000 a month or more, or running just a ton of traffic, the nuances of that testing is not worth your time for that little bit of testing to pay off. You're far better off, split testing a headline on an ad than you are doing this, right? So, and in fact, I know, Kurt, you've got a good story about our friend Perry, who's been using that same one all the time, right? I mean, it's, this is a guy who's done millions and millions of dollars of business online. Why don't you, it's probably a good segue into telling that story.
The thing is what ends up happening is if you focus, my business partner Tom always says is always got to go back to the basics, right? So what a lot of people worry about at first, Shecky, we both know lots of people who are in this boat, who are like, hang on a second.
Including myself. Yeah.
I got to make sure the button looks right. I think I heard I should use 14 font, but I'm not quite sure if it is 16 font. But I do know the helicopter font. I'm pretty sure other people do it. And then, the feedback for me is always, let's go ahead and, as I like to say, let's break some shit. At least we're doing something. So even if the email is misspelled, let's start sending out email. Let's not write 30 days worth of email, right? Now when we're running traffic, people will ask, like we had somebody ask, Shecky in our Insiders Club this last week. They're like, hey, look, I got 6 clicks, but I didn't get any opt-ins. Is there something wrong with my opt-in page? Statistically, you haven't run enough numbers yet, right? So do you change the 13 or 16 font? That doesn't matter if you don't have any traffic. Getting 3 or 4 or 5 leads, that's great. Getting 5,000 leads, and then you can start seeing which different font works. But you need a lot of numbers to figure out, is it the font? Is it the green on my page? Is it the blue on my page? You need a lot of traffic. So what you got to do is you got to have some kind of baseline first, right? This is what we call our control, okay? So we have our control for our call to action. What we're going to start to take a look at, Shecky, this is what happens towards the very end of this 12 weeks when we call proof, right? It's to really be able to take a look at to say, okay, well, we know proof in our ads, click-through rate, relevant score, that gives us our proof. Well, the next thing is when we're following up for our next call to action for an email, well, how many people are actually opening the email, right? How many people will our call to action, we should know, and we will train you on this, when people click on a link in an email, you're going to know roughly how much that is worth to you. So you're going to know I should really train people because on average, if I get at least 100 people to click on this link, I'll make $100. Like, we'll show you that math. So here's what ends up happening is don't focus on the buttons. Focus on some of the things that makes the user's navigation easier, right? Not prettier, easier. So if you click on a link, is it very clear where they should opt in? If they click on a link, is it very clear where they opt in? Now, a friend of mine that Shecky was telling you about, he owns a very large, many successful 7-figure businesses, many. And he was doing consulting for a very large, that's the way I can say this without identifying anybody. I just have to say very large business in the travel industry. It's probably the only way I can say. Very large business in the travel agency. And they're like, hey, when people are booking X for travel, we're just not getting a lot of leads. We're trying to figure out how we get more leads for our blank travel service. And he's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'll never forget this. He goes, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you what the problem is. I'm going to tell you how to fix it. You're going to track the results. And when I'm right with the results, you're going to pay me 10 grand a month for consulting. I'll give you this one for free. And this company's like, okay, like it's 10 grand a month for consulting. I mean, I guess if he can find the value, and he goes, yep, all you got to do, move your submit button above the fold. That's it. Now, these guys are running a ton of traffic. They're like, we should change the color. We should change the background. We should change the font size. No. Is it easy for someone to navigate? Once you start running 100, 200, 400, 800 clicks a day, for example, then you can really worry about, okay, does a blue button work a little bit better than a gold button? How does that work exactly? Doesn't matter unless you're running enough numbers. So for us, for all of us listening now, quantifiable numbers. Quantifiable numbers would be over 100. 200 shows you some patterns. People are really predictable. People operate in patterns. But if you're only sending out a small group of emails and only 2 or 3 people are clicking a day, you need more emails to learn more. So as you're gathering information, make it dead, stupid, simple. Actually, that should be a really good part of the training. So as they gather information, what are some of the basics that they do that they should just never test? So I know, for example, let's work on email copy. Let's work on link clicks, right? So they won't have to worry about button colors. What are some of the things that you feel are important that people can focus on? Because you always know we never want to stop running traffic. So as people are bringing in traffic, what are some calls to action that people can work on, in your opinion, that will keep moving the line forward?
Well, first you have to close the loop because you're driving me nuts. So go back to the rest of the story and tell everybody what happened once the button got moved off the fold. Thank you.
Button got moved, and it was over quadruple the leads that came in. It was like,
Thank you.
It was a huge rush. But also it was because they went back to the basics. Everybody else was worried about the design, the layout, the color. No, is it more user-friendly? That's the
right. So, so what you're speaking to, thank you for doing that. I'm sorry to give you such a hard time, but we're all on the edge of our chair. You know, it was actually a very good open loop. So what you're speaking to is obviously just things that are they're kind of dead obvious. You know, clear commands, bright colored buttons, white space around the button, you know, obviously a natural progression, let's just say in the language from whatever the previous, you know, it's got to be within context. In other words, like, you know, if you have a paragraph where you're talking about, you know, coats for poodles, then obviously that button's obviously got to be related to say, hey, yeah, get your poodle coat here, or whatever the situation is. So there has to be some congruence with that. In the article, and certainly more on Wednesday, we're going to do a deeper dive into some of the psychology of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, embedded commands and things like that. But what you're speaking to is really just, for now, the dead obvious. And I think that that's really, you know, 60 or 75% of it. I mean, it's the great majority of it. It's just, you have to make things really obvious. And I know that, you know, we always joke around about, you know, sometimes there's a little private joke within Black Box that I'll just maybe make less private right now. But sometimes we often refer to the imbecilic behavior of people on the internet, right? And I don't know that they're necessarily imbeciles, right? But the fact of the matter is, the internet's growing like so fast and so big, and it's just like there's this constant, just, you know, it's like it's a big competition for eyeballs, right? For attention. So if you've got to think about, you know, really easy ways to grab people's attention. So, you know, one of the other things we talk about is, you know, aside from the 10-foot rule, is the fifth grader rule, right? So like, don't ever use any language anything that's beyond what a fifth grader can understand. And, you know, we sometimes joke around when we're building out, you know, marketing sequences, is like, we almost want to put like a button that says, click here, dummy. You know, it's like, you almost have to assume that these people are dumb, but it's really not that they're dumb. It's just that there's so many distractions on the internet that you have to just be super clear and super specific and super like dumbed down about what to actually do. And because otherwise you're going to be losing clicks by not doing that.
So here's what happens. This is part of the psychology. This is part of persuasion. We're going to talk about this just a little bit as well, too. And persuasion, when I say that, some people are like, that could be used for good or evil. We only use it for good, for people that take good action. So here's what ends up happening. People, at the end of the day, require, and they just, the way they're built, is they require to be told what to do. They really, really, really.
Yeah, they need to be led.
Now, what's interesting is I'm going to go a little check. I'm going to kind of go off on the deep end for just a little bit. I watch a lot of documentaries on entrepreneurs, businesses, kind of the economy. I know it sounds kind of boring, but really the psychology of why people make decisions. Sheck, if you remember, there was in the 50s and 60s, they ran an experiment, and what that experiment basically was is they would tell someone, they'd be like, they'd put you and I in a room, right? And then say, okay, Kurt, don't worry about this guy over here. But you're going to ask him a question. If he gets the question wrong, you're going to push a button that's going to shock him. Every time he gets a question wrong, you're going to keep on shocking him more and more and more and more and more. Don't worry about him. You just have to shock him. So people would say, okay, and they'd start shocking him, and they'd hear the other guy on the other side of the screen. They'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? Stop. I have a heart condition. Oh, this is all made up, by the way. I have a heart condition. And people would turn around and they'd look at the moderator and they say, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stop. Moderator goes, it doesn't require your opinion. What it requires in this experimentation is for you to hit the next button. And a large percentage of people kept hitting the button just because they were told. And they're like, internally, they're like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know but someone kept telling me what to do. And the study was done really to kind of understand, wait a minute, how do people take control of like world positions, political situations? It was actually, it originally came from some of the trials, some of the Nuremberg trials. And they wanted to find out where some of these lieutenants that were in World War II said, hey, look, I'm just following orders. That's all I was doing is just following orders. And what the research was really done on is that true? Do people really just follow orders? And a lot of times people do. Now that develops a lot of trust, and there's a part of persuasion in there where you never want to make it wrong. But I'll tell you this, Shecky and I, we spend a lot of time putting together these trainings. I spend a lot of time traveling, meeting interesting individuals. We spend a lot of time talking, telling stories. So I am 100% confident when someone joins Social Media Ad Genius that they're going to get a ton of value. I know when they ask us questions, when they participate in our products and services, I've seen lots of the testimonials. So what's going to happen is I'm going to tell people to take action. Like we tell you here, join the breakout session. We're passionate behind it because we know those next steps. And it's not because people inherently are stupid. It's because honestly, they're bombarded with so many other messages, so many other people telling them what to do. Shecky, you said it as well too. There's so much information on Google. People want to be reassured that, hey, this is good information. I like you. I trust you, and I'm going to follow when you tell me to click on that link. I want to click on that link because you guys always give me good blog information, or you guys always have a really good breakout session that I can really learn some about my business. But you have to tell. You really do. I mean,
yeah, that's that whole conversation about, the Nazi Germany and all the people that were quote unquote just following orders, and even going back to that the initial test about the subjects were told to do that and shock the other people. One of the layers to that sort of concept that you touched on is obviously a layer of authority, right? So in the original experiment, the people that ran the experiment were actually wearing a white lab coat.
Oh yes.
So as a result of that, just the garb that they were wearing and their tone of voice, there was an automatic sort of tone of authority. Obviously, same thing in Nazi Germany. They were all wearing their soldiers' outfits, right? And, obviously officers' outfits, which are different from just the typical rank and file. So if you think about that sort of next layer of the psychology, then what's happening as you're producing content, right? You are positive. Like in our world, it doesn't really matter what we're wearing. I mean, I know people gave us crap a couple of weeks ago about what we were wearing and what we were saying and whatever. But the reality is, you bring up a good point, Kurt, in that in the development of good content for your audience, you are building a layer of authority. So as a result, you have a better chance with a proper CTA of getting them to click on it just by virtue of the quality content that you have produced leading up to that point. Does that make sense?
Now, I notice you said quality content, not perfect content. So if you're if you're getting leads, always be sending you should send an email at least every day, at least 5 days a week. And that's how that when you're starting dating, when you're starting to talk to people, it has to be. So, Shecky, one of the things that just frustrates me to no end, and this is 2 points. One, when people get opt-ins and then they just stop following up after 7 days. Or when they get qualified clicks and they stop following up. People always need to feel a progression. And your calls to action should be that progression. If someone doesn't feel that they're moving forward, they won't. They won't buy. They won't click. So we really got to get good about the science of progression, right? And then, of course, comes conversion. But let's talk about conversion for just a second, Shecky. If you're training people to click, we'll see some emails come out. Hey, in the next 48 hours, keep an eye open for the next email. Well, no shit. I already saw your first email. What do you mean keep an eye open? But it builds just a little bit of anticipation. Hey, in the next 24 hours, you're going to click on a link that's going to look just like this, going to take you to a page just like this. And if you click it at 7 o'clock, you're going to see a whole different page open up. Now it's building anticipation, tells people where to click. So the third time they send the email and says, click this link, you've already built anticipation for people to click the link.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Shecky, let's talk a little bit about call to actions and conversions. So we talked about training people to click or training people to go back to a blog. What are some of your favorite call to actions, for example, when we're closing out a sales special? I'll give you some of these. And you know how the sales go. We start some sales right here. Closing on Sunday, closing on Sunday. Oh, it's going to close on Sunday. What are some of your favorite ways that you've seen entrepreneurs use to use a call to action and close out sales?
Well, you bring up a good point, and that's, one of them is obviously what we would call scarcity. And scarcity can be used in a lot of different ways. One of them, which you just alluded to, which is just a scarcity via a time frame. In other words, this special is going to end, on Sunday night at midnight. So your emails that lead up to that, of course, all have a CTA in them, but they just, the language starts getting stronger again. And interestingly, on all those kinds of offers and launches, we see the greatest amount of buys and purchases within the last few minutes before the cart closes, because people generally are procrastinators. That's number one. And number two, the reason that scarcity works in that way is because they have a fear of loss. It's a common psychological issue. So they're like, oh my God, if I don't get this deal now, I may not ever get it, right? We see this in a lot of areas. For example, Amazon. I'm sure everybody's been on Amazon. Have that little thing that, say there's only, you go to buy a book or something, and they say there's only 7 of these left in stock. Well, what does that really mean? There's like 40,000 of them behind that original 7. But as silly as that is, Amazon, they have tons of testing, and they have the resources to do that. But they've seen a huge increase in sales, psychological scarcity. So that one we see everywhere, all across the internet. And I know if you've been shopping online, I may have spoiled some things for you, but it definitely does work.
Yeah, the thing is remember, people typically don't buy because they don't have enough information to buy, or they don't know why they have to buy right now. That's it. So when you go to the gas station, you need gas so you can get the heck out of the gas station, right? It's a requirement. Great. Set up a gas station. People come in, they're getting gas. When they come in to pay, they could pick up some additional upsells, some additional sodas, candy, crap food that convenience stores usually have, 7-day-old hot dogs, whatever. Yeah, someone told me, they're like, I love the 7-Eleven hot dogs. I'm like, I go in there all the time. So they tell me which one was put on in the last hour, which one has been there for a little while. And I'm like, still doesn't sound like a healthy meal option to me. But anyway, the thing is, we want to really talk. We want to think about, okay, what's the next logical step for someone? So, for example, if you're ready to close out sales, testimonials. Here are other people who are just like you. When you run ads that are here are people just like you, that's big, because really people want to hang out with people who are just like that, right? I'm sure you guys hang out at a favorite restaurant or bar or club, or you have an area because you feel accepted, and that's just where you like to, just a good vibe where you like to hang out, right? But for people to take action, we got to make sure is, hey, can other people do it? We got other people do it. Now, why is it important to buy right now? So if you have a product, service, or special, like we tell people, social media ad genius, look, you're going to spend the money anyway on Facebook ads. Either spend the money learning on what to do when you're investing and spending your money, because now you know you're buying data, or just take some lucky guesses. Either way, you're going to pay for it. You can either do it now or you can do it later. You can save a lot of money now if you buy Social Media Ad Genius. And for looking at it over the next 48 hours, we'll give you a special price. It's a call to action with a time limit. So remember, people make decisions based off of, will this work for me? Is there proof that it actually works in the first place, right? Could be just a couple of case studies. Those are testimonials. And why do I need this right now? Does it solve a need? Does it solve a void? Or can I put this off and just buy it next month? Like, I know people, checky people will tell me, you know what, I'll take a look at Social Media Ad Genius, but let me run a month of ads on my own. Let me see what happens. And they come back and they're like, I lost $1,000, Kurt. I can't afford a course. And I'm like, but you would have spent $97 and showing you that you don't have to spend $1,000 to figure out that your ads just don't work, right?
Right. And then they have their call with me, and we get into some really basic stuff like moving the buy button above the fold, and all of a sudden everything starts working, So it's usually just something really simple that they could have easily picked up just by going through a little bit of the training. But I have another one I want to relate to you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, please.
The other one that works really, really well, and we see it in a lot of different ways, is reciprocity. So people will always feel more obligated to buy something from you if you give them something first, right? So we see that, for example, we see like if you look at a launch and look at it that way, as we get near the end, there's a concept that many marketers use called tracking, right? And so say, look, if you do this right now and buy before the car closes at midnight, not only am I going to give you the original product, but I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z, and you're going to get a free coaching call, and blah, 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 right? And so we all know, just as human beings, when somebody just gives you something of value, obviously it has to be of value, that you know it's something that you can use, you obviously feel, you may not necessarily mean a sale, but you feel a little bit more of a sense of obligation to that person to somehow buy them or do business with them. And to go like completely meta on you, like that's essentially what this Blab about. Like we do a lot of things, and we put out content and articles, and Kurt, you and I get on here and talk about stuff and do a deeper dive. And it's like, yeah, if you want to find out more, become part of become a member of Social Media Ad Genius, right? And you'll get all these recordings, and you get the webinar recordings, and heck, we even do the webinar recordings for free. If someone's not an expert, they won't get the recordings, right? That will sit in their back office that they can really use and have that whole set of tools available to them. But they can pick up a lot of good stuff right now. But what's happening in an underlying way right there is absolutely the law of reciprocity, right? And we make sales as a result of doing that.
Yeah. Hey, there's a couple things I did real quick. Reality Tracker down here, Cracker, I think that's what it is. Says, I've been in internet marketing game since the 90s. You guys can Google these guys or scam artists trying to sell ebooks and recorded talks. Now, Shecky, what I find interesting is I've actually never sold an ebook, which is very interesting. I also don't sell any recorded talks, which that's really interesting. And if you Google us, there's not one bad review, which is pretty interesting. And when I looked at this dude, You know what
Are you saying he's saying that about us or what?
Yeah, he put that over in the comment section. I always, there's always a choice where I make where I'm like, do I want to be rich or do I want to be right? And what I love about the interwebs is anybody can say anything at any time with very little or no proof. And other people think the more mean things that I say, the more that people will pay attention to me. Please, someone. One of the best things that I love about when people are like, I shouldn't even say when people are like, we rarely ever get any negative comments, ever. Every once in a while, an internet troll will come along, but like it's just interesting.
Yeah,
I've never met by starting a negative.
What I have to say to that dude is whatevs.
Don't ever do that again on tape. That's horrible. Don't ever.
It's just irrelevant. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, and this is really important, especially as you're talking about call to action and stuff like that. Sometimes messages like that will really start to bother people. And as a creator, the people you don't require to listen to negativity, require that you start taking a look at, honestly, the people that you're serving and what people say about your products and services. The one reason is that I am highly confident in what we do, what we talk about, the content that we cover. It's not because, I'm cocky. I'm really confident, though. And the reason is because our business for the last 5 years has been 100% referral only by some of the who's who. We've had thousands of people purchase our products from all around the world. We've had hundreds of people say, oh my God, it's changed my life, and write us directly. Negative feedback doesn't bother me whatsoever because, man, I know the feeling when someone walks up in an airport and they're like, oh my God, you changed my life. So the only way that you can make that happen, as I say this all the time, is consistency. So when you're following up with people, this is the consistency and the value that you add to the world. So it's not just that they opt in and they go through 7 emails. Continue to have some type of call to action like we've talked about the last 2 weeks, is where you have weekly content. You have a weekly event. And now you're having a weekly call to action. Every week, people should be clicking on a link that you're sending them in an email or clicking on one of your ads that's sending them to a blog post or that next logical step. Regardless if they're a click to your website and they're not an opt-in, regardless if they are an opt-in or if they're a buyer. Everybody should have the respect that you're following up with them on a regular basis and continuing that conversation. Now, what you're going to find, and we're finding in very, very big ways, retargeting on blog content just to keep people updated, retargeting on newsletters that you send out, retargeting a video like, hey, everybody, let me just tell you what's going on this week and what we're doing, can have dramatic effects to people who have never opted in, can get them to opt in. People who've already opted in, it builds a better rapport. And people who have bought see you on a regular basis. Because remember, once someone has purchased with you, typically is their buying process is over, and now they're going to rely on you for more information. Unless you screw it up, they're typically not going to buy from you and then go find another, like for instance, like with us, if someone buys a Facebook course from us, they're typically not going to buy another course for another 30 to 45 days once they've gone through everything. But we can tell people who buy courses one right after the other, because we can look in, someone will say, hey, I want a refund, the course isn't for me. And they clicked on every single link in the training over a 2-day period. It's cool. We understand that process, right? It's just kind of whatever. So, Shecky, we are talking about calls to action, right? You've been working on the presentation, I know. Why don't you give people a little bit of taste? What are some of the things that we are going to cover, and why should people click on this link down over here with the breakout session so they can register for the breakout session? What are we going to cover this week?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me that. Well, first we're going to talk about just look and feel, like how, just like the pretty part of things, the design, things like that, because this is proven stuff. We're going to talk about, all the different kinds of CTAs, and people are going to get some ideas of places to put CTAs where they may not have otherwise thought to put them, right? Which can obviously greatly enhance the effectiveness of your marketing sequence. Yeah. We're going to talk obviously about the psychology of it too, and what kind of language to use, and how to position that stuff, and congruency and things like that. It's essentially just a much deeper dive of some of the stuff that we kind of glossed over today. But when you get done with Wednesday, you're going to have a very clear indication of how to move forward. There definitely will be some very actionable steps, best practices, all that kind of stuff. And, obviously in this kind of format of a blab of just, us showing our faces and not necessarily using screenshots. That's the beauty of doing our breakout sessions, which is in essentially a webinar format, because we're getting, as we move forward with each week, we get into some pretty deep detail on those slides, and we use, pictures and bullet points and things like that. So you really get a visual to what we're talking about and seeing it. It's just a much more scientific way to deliver the information than what we can do in a format like today.
Yeah, the biggest problem is, and Shecky, we go through this every week. The biggest problem is this online marketing thing. It's not easy, and it doesn't have to be a job, but its rewards are amazing. The place I've traveled in the last couple of weeks, the people that I've met, the place that Shecky's at right now, the ability to be able to travel as well too. We have a lot of different options that, Shecky, let's be honest, 4 or 5 years ago, or 5 years ago, I don't know about you, but I do know because I know you so well. Things you wanted to work on medically or health or diet or travel, like that was, hey, I got to take 2 weeks off. How am I going to take off 4 days from my job? How am I going to? Now it's completely different. And it really comes down to being a math problem. But what happens is people are like, oh my, like there's so much. I have a website. You guys are talking about ads. Now I got to do a landing page and follow up email and retargeting ads and blogs and content and relevance score. Oh, I'll never get this figured out. When in fact, Shecky really is a great avatar for us. Because the thing is Shecky's like, look, this life that I was leading before, the last profession you were in, Shecky, it's like, I don't want to work 7 days a week. And I feel guilty if I've scheduled 6 days a week because they want me to go in for a 7th day a week. And like I was doing well, but now I'm working 14 hours. I don't have time to do anything. And you never said, but I don't know how. And that bugs the shit out of me with students. That you're like, I'm going to try this, lead page thing. And I'm going to try this Facebook fan page thing. And I'm going to just try to hit some buttons and see what happens. And all of a sudden a product starts to grow and an idea really starts to grow. So we try to figure out, how do we quantify each steps of that process? Because I know when I first started out, Shecky, it took me a good year to build everything out. I know you were working a good long time on it. And now if we look at this, We recorded, I think we're at 17 trainings now, 17 or 18 trainings, I think, at this point.
Yeah, something like that. It's starting to, there's a nice little library back there now.
Actually, you know what I'm going to do, Shecky, very soon? I'll draw out the entire funnel, right? Where we draw out each training so people can just click on each part of the funnel. Because we want to be able to do is to someone to say, I don't know where to get started, or I have a little bit of experience, but one step to the next. You can watch through every single one of these videos so you can design your very own ad funnel that's going to work for Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And then we have Social Media Ad Genius that will teach you Facebook. And, we have some other trainings that will show you some other ad platforms as well, too. But the other thing we want to be able to do in this literally this total 17 total steps, we want to be able to do is when someone's like, I don't understand retargeting. They look at their funnel, where they'd be at right now. Retargeting is right here, step number 5. They click on that right there. And you go right to a video that's an hour-long breakout session, what we just had, some documentation of some resources that you're going to have as well, too. But either we're going to show you how to build it from scratch, or we're going to show you just like a factory. We're going to show you which component do you really need to walk over and turn that one screw that could make the entire difference in your business. Sometimes, and Shecky, you know this too, sometimes it's these small little tweaks that really make a huge difference for your business. Huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you just from a standpoint of the baby boomer angle is that for some of us, not so much for me anymore, but for some of us, there's plenty of tech issues. Although I'm actually dealing with one right now behind the scenes. So the reality is there's always an answer, and there's always somebody who knows more than you. Right. And for the most part, I would say that, 98% of what you need to know and learn is somewhere in our office, in our back office, as far as putting stuff together. So it's just a matter of going and finding it. I think for a lot of us, it's just a matter of, just taking a deep breath and exercising some patience.
Yeah, because I think, Shecky, you hear me. Thank you for saying that, because you hear me say this all the time. Well, in perspective, if you really take a look at it. Right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, me and my buddy John were sitting on my balcony on Thursday. Shecky, really, just too bad you missed this. At my feet, literally, is a world-class concert going on, right? With this beautiful view of downtown and all these other bands going on and everything else. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I would have never believed growing up in Nebraska, the education that I had, that I would ever be at a spot like this, ever. Like, not in my wildest dreams. But then the thing is if I thought about, and we started talking about, well, wait a minute, if I still had a job, right, this would be something that I'd be saving for, that I don't know how I'd be able to do this. But now I'm able to architect a life in a very short amount of time. We're talking about really 5 years, really 5 to 6 years, right? But there are people that have shorter stories of a year or 2 years. But if we look at the scheme of things, I always tell people this, Shecky, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Most people have gone to school for 40 years or 50 years in a job before they retire. Your life can be completely different. Hell, let's just say in 12 months, you make your first $10,000 online. 12 months, right? It may take you 12 months. It may take you 10 grand to do it. A lot of people spend a college education for 40 grand that they're going to, by the time they repay it, it's going to be well over 100 grand. We're talking about a year. One of my friends, Mike Diller, that really helped get started in this business, we were at a big event, and he was telling me one night, and he's like, this is at one of these events that invite 100 entrepreneurs. And he's like, he's done over 55 million online. And he's like, isn't it amazing how much your life can change in 24 months? Just 24 months. That's it. I mean, Shecky, look at our business in the last year. We've adapted in very interesting ways that have been very, very, very successful for us. But it's a short amount of time. So really, you invest the time of watching these videos, right, step by step. It's going to give you a bulletproof funnel, because we run millions of dollars in lots of different niches for lots of different people. We understand their business acumen, how they follow up, their marketing plans. This stuff works as long as you just follow it step by step. So we got 5 minutes left. I start talking about the Profit Factory. I get all excited because I know for me, it's one of the greatest things that I can do to help people in the world, to really help them scale and run their business and be able to do some of the things that we're able to do. So I'm excited about this stuff. Anything you want to talk about? We're going to talk about on Wednesday?
No, not really. I'm feeling a little homesick for Austin when I hear you talk about that. So I have to stay away just because of some issues with my place. And which will be done soon, but I look forward to being back next week. And it's interesting that you talk about, flexibility of lifestyles and just, the internet affording us a situation where we can work remotely. And there's absolutely no question that that's a blessing. I mean, this has been a really interesting couple of weeks for me, like just, really amazing and really eye-opening. And especially for a baby boomer, because I was having this conversation with some of the guys here where I'm at in my secret location who are more of, let's just say younger, the 20 and 30 guys that are internet entrepreneurs that kind of just travel the world and do all this stuff. So they were never raised with a mindset of a baby boomer where you just kind of like do that, Grand Prix and fight the traffic every day and go to the office and punch the time clock and do all that. Whereas as a baby boomer, I was raised, kind of with that mindset. So for me, this is a really, really great stretch for me. But at the same time, even just working from my apartment and having that flexibility, Kurt, of, being a couple blocks away from you and being able to stop by, and for us to be able to do our bike rides in the morning, even if you never leave home, there's a certain flexibility from being able to make money from your laptop. It's just a huge blessing. So I just want to put that out.
Yeah, I think, the one thing that I say over and over and over, like I'm always amazed for the things I'm able to do now. But when I say able to do now, I just want to show other people how to do the exact same thing. That, hey, if you want to take off, on a trip, or you want to have that vacation with your family, you can do that. Now, we can show you how to make a lot of money. We can actually go out and buy a house. But what I like to show people how to do is making $100,000 in one launch. That sounds sexy. Like, oh, I'm making $100,000, but then there's taxes and affiliates and all these other products. If we can show you how to make an extra $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, and $1,500 a month, that's a really nice car payment or 2 car payments. Or for many people, a pretty good size, if not their mortgage. So what we'd like to be able to do is, hey, look, if you have a product, service, and idea, like for example, I just got off the phone right before here, Shecky, I'll tell you this real quick, great group. But I work with this group of individuals, these 2 guys that had some really serious health issues. Like they would go to the doctor and the doctor would be like, Shecky, tell me if you ever heard this story. You're pretty much fine. Look, you're not on a bunch of medication. You look fine. By the way, most doctors have less than 10 hours of nutritional training throughout their entire doctor training stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy. So anyway, these guys had horrible health problems. They went out and they found their answer, and they found this diet that really helped change things. Like doctors thought they were crazy, and they're like, no, there's something wrong with my body. And they created this special diet. And it's not a diet per se as, hey, lose a bunch of weight. It is, oh my goodness, I'm going to feel good. I'm not going to have acne. I'm not going to be overweight. I'm not going to have horrible bowel movements. Like they really fix some things. Other people want to know how they did it, and they built an online business from it. From building that online business, all these other health practitioners come up and they're like, you guys have an amazing story. That's like my story. I want to have a business online for what you guys did. And now what they're doing is they're creating a business showing other people how to do what they did. So they created a business out of another business. But they used to be auto workers. They used to work 50 hours a week. And one of their stories really resonated with me because one of the guys is working in an auto factory making 6 figures a year, high 6 figures. Actually, in an auto industry, not really high, but I think it was like $200,000. I think that's something like that. And he was overweight and he was stressed out and he was working 7 days a week and he hated his job and he hated where he went into. And he goes in, this is when the economy starts taking a tank. And one of his superiors says, you should feel really lucky. We're going to have to cut your pay. We're going to double your work. But you should feel really lucky because someone like you has still a pretty decent paying job in an economy like this. And he's like, they wanted me to feel grateful for being overweight, tired, stressed out. Like I spent a lot of time figuring out how I was going to make my diet better. Once my life started to change, I wanted to help other people the same way. So now my board meetings consist of walking up a mountain, talking to my partners how we can grow our business to show others how to do the same thing. And I'm like, dude, that's what I love to show people how to do, right? They got this passion. They got this dream. There are a lot of people out there that want your solution. You just got to know how to advertise it right. And once you figure out how to advertise it right, honestly, Shecky's international secret location that I know that you just like to say, which is great, is you told me.
I got that from you.
I know. That's which is great. You told me after you were already there. You're a guy that works with us and for us, and you told us that doesn't matter because with your performance and the ability for us to do this stuff here, your life could be completely different in perspective if you take just the right steps. That's what we're doing right now.
Indeed.
So, Shecky, thank you for being here. I know the training is going to be great. Again, these are all sectionalized trainings that either, hey, you can you can register for the webinar right now, which is the breakout session. You're definitely going to want to be. We're going to talk a lot about the science and the call to action from call to action in ads, call to action on your blog, call to action even in presentations. What are some of the things that we should tell people to do? We're going to go through some persuasion techniques as well too, where we're going to talk about how people make decisions in the buying process. That's going to be really good. And, what are the things you should worry about, but you don't have to worry about? So again, these recordings are always going to go up. They're up on YouTube. And you're also going to see register for the breakout presentation because that's where you can answer or get your questions answered as well too. Anything else, Shecky?
Awesome. No, man, I appreciate you and look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming and see you on the breakout session. Register for the breakout session.
Bye.
See you, everybody.